So this is totally unrelated to passports. Um, this video is about multiple intelligences or intelligences. Now, I was driving home today and I remembered someone telling me a few days ago that they don't have any hobbies. And I thought, how unfortunate. I knew my hobby when I was 8. My hobby was sewing. And I used to sew clothes for the dolls for my neighbors, like we lived in the same tenement. And I used to sew dolls for them and I stuffed them with fabric and I used to sew clothes for them and they used to come to the dressmaker, which was me, and they bought doll clothes from me. I even used to sew on braid here, like when your parents set the braid out, I put a knot at the end of it and I would sew it on to the doll's head so they had. So sewing was my hobby. But then I also had a knack for words. It was a weird thing. I loved words. I was keen to words. No word passes my hearing. And then there was also the pronunciation and the grammar, and I was always correcting people's grammars at school, and they were so annoyed by me. And I took nothing of it. I just knew that mispronunciation and poor grammar bothered me. I used to carry on a little pocket dictionary in my purse, and I always studied words, and I studied letters, and I studied pronunciation, and I studied diacritic marks because I wanted to know how to pronounce words. So if I know a word that has these letters, I would look for another word that I actually know, look at the diacritic mark, and then use the pronunciation of that word to pronounce another word. Now, you could not tell me I was not a word whisperer. I thought I was a proper word whisperer. When I heard words, I just felt like I knew what they meant. And I couldn't understand it. And I was like, I never heard that word before, so how do I know what it means? And then there are other times where I would be talking and I'd say a word and I don't even know where the word came from. And if I sat down to like plan out to write something, the word would never come to me. In conversation, I just say words that I don't even know where they came from. So fast forward several years and then I came to the US. So fast forward to several years later, and I am living in the US, and I hadn't gotten myself straightened out yet, and so I was working as a babysitter for a little girl. One day, a lady came over to work with a little girl, and I noticed she was working on her speech. The little girl had a speech impediment, and I was like, what is happening right now? What is this? What are you doing? Because some wheels were turning in my head like, okay, hold up. You can teach somebody how to speak better? So when she was done, I was like, okay, what is that voodoo you were doing? And she said, I'm a speech pathologist and I was giving her speech therapy, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh my God. I had an aha moment because I was like, why do I feel like this is my calling? And so, of course, I enrolled in CUNY and I did my 4 years of my bachelor's in speech pathology, also known as communication disorders. Oh my God, I was in heaven. I had found my place. I had a 4.0. I decided to move on to the master's program. Well, I thought about moving on to the master's program. And then I thought maybe I do literacy instead. Something was calling me towards literacy also. So instead of doing speech, I did literacy in my master's. Ugh, I had a 4.0. I knocked it out of the park because it just felt so natural to me. The only thing that was hard for me was auditory science. But after that, I got enrolled in this program and I got my degree. And during my master's program, when I was studying education, we had to learn how to teach kids who were different. Different in the sense of likes, dislikes, learning styles. And so as part of my literacy program, I learned about multiple intelligences. And this book is written by Thomas Armstrong. And in this book, he's talking about Gardner's 8 intelligences. Now, how does this relate to the person telling me they do not have any hobbies? I feel like we don't sometimes get exposed enough to different options and different possibilities and different avenues and walks of life where we can experience different things that will jog something in us. If I didn't happen to be in that house that day with the little girl, seeing her getting speech pathology, I might not have learned about speech pathology, or maybe I would have learned way later on after I had done some other degree that brought me no joy. We have to, as adults and kids, when we're finding ourselves, we have to be exposed to different things. And I'm saying this mostly for kids. Kids have to be exposed to different things. I've been reading a lot of articles in the paper these days talking about schools are planning on teaching background knowledge because they're realizing how important background knowledge is to learning. Like, what? you are just realizing that background knowledge is important to learning. You can't just read a sentence and know what it means without having knowledge of each of the words in that sentence and putting them together to make meaning. Anyway, I'll talk about background knowledge in another video. But as kids and adults, but like I said, kids especially, kids need to be exposed to different things to help them not only learn better in school, but help them know who they are, find themselves, discover their calling. So many adults don't know what their calling is at this very moment. And so many kids are in school struggling, wondering what they're going to be when they grow up. They have that one generic answer that they give everybody. I'm going to be a lawyer, I'm going to be an astronaut. But they don't really know. And by the time you get to the 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th grade, you should probably be thinking about what you're going to be so that when you go to college, you can declare your major early. Of course, you can declare your major late, but at least you will have an idea what you're leaning towards. Kids need to be taken out to different places, to the farm, to the museum, to the beach, to the pool. And not only taken places, there has to be a discussion about it. Taken to historic places, because when you see a historical reenactment, it lasts longer in the memory than teacher teaching you about dates and what happened on those dates. I hate history. I can't. Give me a reenactment and I will remember what happened. Don't tell me these dates and when it took place, because I don't know. Ask me right now when was World War I and I probably wouldn't tell you. You kids need to be exposed to different things so they can find themselves but also get this background knowledge. A kid could be watching something on TV and be like, hey, that looks interesting. I think I can do that. Or they could be at the park, or they could be at the farm, or they could go to, it could be, like bring your kid to work day, or it could be anything that exposes them to something different can be a trigger for the thing they have an inclination to. Anyway, get off your soapbox scale. So we're talking about multiple intelligences. Let us get into talking about Howard Gardner's intelligences. He proposes that there are 8 intelligences. Let me get my spectacles. Howard Gardner came up with 8 principles or 8 theories or 8 different types of intelligences. And I'm going to name them. And if I have enough time, I will describe them. So the first intelligence posited by Howard Gardner is linguistic. Reading from my text. The capacity to use words effectively, whether orally, example as a storyteller, orator, or politician, or in writing as a poet or a playwright or editor or journalist. This intelligence includes the ability to manipulate the syntax or structure of language, the phonology or sounds of language, the semantics or meaning of language, and the pragmatic dimensions or practical use of language. So this has to do with language and words and pronunciations and, just manipulating language and manipulating words and being able to extract meaning very easily from spoken or written words. Then there is the logical and mathematical. This one can speak for itself. This capacity is the capacity to use numbers effectively. Example as a mathematician, a tax accountant, a statistician. This intelligence includes sensitivity to logical patterns and logical relationships and statements and proposals that are based in logic. So that's mathematical. If you have a mathematical inclination, because math would have come very easily for you in school. Spatial. This one I don't have. The ability to perceive the visual and spatial world. So spatial comes with, you can hear the word space in there, so it's your existence in physical space. The ability to perceive the visual and spatial world accurately, example as a hunter, a scout, or a tour guide, or to perform transformations upon those perceptions, as an interior decorator, or an architect, an artist, or an inventor. This intelligence involves sensitivity to color, line, shape, form, space, and the relationship that exists between these elements. So that is the spatial intelligence. So if you find that you like rearranging your living room and everybody always compliments you, how great it looks, you're probably spatially intelligent and you could probably figure out how to turn that into something. So there's bodily and kinesthetic. Expertise in using one's body to express ideas and feelings. And again, I'm reading Howard Gardner's theory, written by Thomas Armstrong. No infringement here. So bodily and kinesthetic has to do with expertise in using one's body to express ideas and feelings, especially as an actor, a mime, an athlete, or a dancer. And facility in using one's hands to produce or transform things, example, a craftsperson, sculptor, mechanic, or surgeon. This intelligence includes specific physical skills such as coordination, balance, dexterity, strength, flexibility, and speed, as well as proprioceptive, tactile, and haptic capabilities. Whenever somebody tells me that they don't understand why I'm a Jamaican and I can't dance, I don't have that gene. I don't have that intelligence. I don't have that skill. But what I always counter with is I have other skills. I'm trying to sit low to keep the light from reflecting in my eyes, but I'm looking very weird leaning over like this. I don't know if I made it worse. All right, so let's get back into the intelligences. Musical. This one also speaks for itself. The capacity to perceive and discriminate and express musical forms. So a composer, a performer, a music critic. So if you're musical, you have an inclination towards music. You find you can read musical notes easily. You can play an instrument that you didn't even learn to play. One of my friends told me this the other day, and I said to her, maybe your daughter has this calling and you didn't really realize that. And she had an aha moment right there. The thing about this is you probably have to expose your kids to musical instruments. And this is where exposing kids to different avenues come in. Maybe they get to play, the violin at the YMCA. Maybe if your kid gets a chance to play a musical instrument, let them. It will be extremely beneficial because music and math go hand in hand. But not only that, your kid might find a calling. And there are kids who respond very well to auditory cues, and this can also aid in their learning. But anyway, we won't get into all of that because I have to get through 4 more intelligences. Interpersonal. This is an ability to perceive and make distinctions in moods, intentions, motivations, and feelings of other people. This can include sensitivity to facial expression, their voice, their gestures, and have the capacity for discriminating among different kinds of interpersonal cues. Intrapersonal. So this is within oneself. So inter, and I'm going to talk about prefixes and base and root words in a video long from now. Inter means between two things. Intra means within a thing. So if you have intrapersonal intelligence now, you have great self-knowledge. This is one that I have. I have intrapersonal skill. I understand myself. I can read myself. I see my problems and I try to fix them. But self-knowledge and ability to act adaptively on the basis of that knowledge. This intelligence includes having an accurate picture of one's self, one's strengths and one's limitation, and awareness of one's inner moods, intentions, motivations, temperaments, and desire, and the capacity for self-discipline, self-understanding, and self-esteem. The other day, a friend of mine told me that she was having some issue with something, and I told her that she need something that was stressing her. I told her she had to find her center. She said she had no idea what that was and how to find that. I asked her something about herself, like, do you so and so, and she said she wouldn't even know. And I know there are people who are not like keen on themselves like that. I get it, but I guess that's not one of your strengths. But I definitely am in tune with myself. Then there is a naturalistic, another intelligence. And you think someone like me who loves nature would have a strong naturalistic intelligence, but I do not. I know nothing about a single plant that I see outside. And a person with naturalistic intelligence, like one of my friends on Instagram, Loy, she loves plants and she knows plants and she has a knack for getting them to grow. Me personally, I've killed everything I've ever been given as a plant. Except my peace lily is still thriving because I watered with boiled water. Cooled boiled water. Naturalistic intelligence. Of course, you have a knack for the natural environment. Animals, birds, anything that's natural, you have a knack for that. I think that's the last one. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So let's go over them again. Linguistic, logical, mathematical, spatial, bodily and kinesthetic, musical, interpersonal, intrapersonal, and naturalistic. Of course, I don't have to tell you, my intelligence is linguistic. This I know. My second intelligence is intrapersonal, and I have a little bit interpersonal. What I do not have is bodily and kinesthetic. If you saw my story where I was dancing, daylight come, I'm going to go home, probably see it somewhere in my Instagram, I can't dance. But I don't feel bad. People will try to make me feel bad because people think everybody who's Jamaican has to be able to dance. I don't have that gene. I don't have that skill. I can't do that. but I do other things very well. Spatial, I'm not very good at, because you could spin me around and I would be lost completely. I would drive the same road and still be lost going back there again unless I'm really, really, really used to it. And so I don't have those. Musical, I don't have. Mathematical, I don't have a natural knack for math either. I have to learn math. So my intelligences are linguistic, interpersonal, and intrapersonal. That's about it. But I make the best use of the ones that I have. In terms of working with the hands, they claim that I'm good with spatial. Okay, I can make things. So maybe I have a little spatial, but linguistics is mine. And so in knowing that my strength is in linguistics, if I found out my strength before I knew my calling, I already knew my calling was word when I found out about the intelligences. But if I were trying to figure out what I could be, then I might think, could I be a writer? Could I be an editor? I might have even thought perhaps I could be a teacher, because I've always corrected people's grammar. Could it be that teaching is my thing? But luckily, I found my calling. It is in teaching, it is in literacy. And then the funny thing is, I've been saying this to my friend, is that when people contact me with problems with their passport applications or any other issue, I love reading through them to see what the problem is. When they contact me and explain a problem to me, give me the facts, show me the paperwork, and I will figure out what is wrong here, because I enjoy doing that. And I was surprised, even now at this late stage, how much do I need a podcast? I was surprised at this late stage of my life how much I am still learning, because what I do now as a document preparer ties so well into me having a knack for words, because I fill forms, I read forms, I understand forms, I understand processes, I understand all the requirements. And I keep thinking about how it just comes full circle for me. Of course, maybe I'll go back into the classroom one day, not in the classroom per se, but rather as a literacy teacher who does intervention for struggling readers. That's the only thing I will do. I'm not going to be a class, or I'd be a librarian. I thought about that. But yeah. Anyway, I said all of this to say, if you're trying to figure out what your calling is, your hobbies, or you want to help your child figure out what it is, perhaps look at their intelligences. So explore your kids' intelligences. Give them the different opportunities that can expose them to so many different things. I'm going to make a video where I talk about having background knowledge, and when I was in my master's program studying, I forgot what it was, audiology, was it? Or was it hearing science? Hearing science. Expose your kids to different things. Expose them to different environments. Have conversation with them. Take them places. Let them see different things. Take them to the ballet. Take them to a play. Take them to the orchestra. Take them to a park. Take them to a museum. Take them to different kinds of museum. Take them to historical reenactments. Take them to historic towns, historic places. Have conversations with them. Let them listen to the news. Be careful what channel though. But let them listen to the news and see what is happening in the world. Ask them their opinions on these things. Ask their views. Try to have discussions with them. Anything can spur a feeling, a thought, or an idea, or inspire you or your child. Anyway, I'm getting off my soapbox. I am Gail, and I don't know where I'm going to store this 3 gigabyte video or where I'm going to share it, but if you do get to see it, I thank you for watching.